Welcome to our talk about leveraging human risk data to strengthen cybersecurity resilience. My name is Michelle Valdez, and I am the Chief Information Security Officer at OneMain Financial.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being at our talk. My name is Masha Sadova, and I am the co-founder at Elevate Security, a company focused on helping organizations measure and influence their employee risk population in their organization. Really excited to talk to you today about one of my favorite subjects, which is human risk. One of the things that we're going to be talking with you today about is, first of all, what is the role of an employee in cyber resiliency, the theme of the conference this year, and what does it mean to have a cyber resilient workforce? We're also going to dive into how do we shift left of the employee risk in our organizations, reducing incidents before they happen so that we can actually create systemic change in our organizations. And I already said this word a couple of times. We're actually going to define what is human risk and how to measure it. And one of the things I'm really excited to share with you all today is some new cutting edge research that we've been able to pull together through millions of data points around trends in human risk that you can apply in your organizations tomorrow. And we're also going to talk to how organizations like OneMain Financial and Michelle and her team have applied some of these findings in their own organizations. So, packed agenda. Let's get started.
There's really not anything that I like to talk about more than resiliency. It's something that I'm really passionate about. So let's talk a little bit about what we mean about cyber resiliency. So resiliency essentially means minimizing the impact of any disruption event. And this starts with ensuring that you have core cybersecurity fundamentals, which become the foundation that you build everything else on. Resiliency is the key to an effective cybersecurity program, especially one that's going to bring value to the business. And one of the most important critical assets needed for a solid foundation is a strong cyber culture. This starts with your company's employees. Don't be the company that builds a castle on shifting sand, because if you do, it will inevitably fail.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to be that house on shifting sand. But one of the things that I've come to see in my career and working with dozens of organizations is that employee risk, human risk really is a problem that we are facing today. The Skittles you see on the screen right now are from the latest Verizon data breach report that took a look at some of the most common ways that attackers have been successful in getting into organizations. And what they discovered was that nearly 2/3 of breaches tie back directly to human factors through attack vectors like phishing, password security compromise, malware, and other categories. So yes, it is a problem because it is one of the area, because ultimately in each of these components that we look at, there is a human being associated with making decisions around this. And as long as we continue to not address employee risk and the human component of security, this will forever be our soft underbelly of security. But it is also our greatest opportunity of transforming the landscape of how we tackle this threat today. So this is one of the most critical areas, I believe, of innovating on security today.
I imagine that everybody who's in the audience has felt like this at some point in time, particularly as a cybersecurity organization. We often can feel at odds with employees, like as if we're playing tug of war on what we allow them to do, what they want to do, and how we enable them. It's our job as cybersecurity professionals to ensure we're protecting the company, but we cannot do it alone. So the only way that you get to, instead of tug of war, everybody rowing in the same direction, is understanding that these employees are actually your best asset. I know a lot of people say that employees are the biggest risk, but I actually really believe that if you take the time to help them understand what their role is in protecting the company and how everything that they do on a daily basis can make a difference, That can transform a company to have a strong cyber resilient workforce. However, it does take a lot of time. It takes investment from you and from your teams, and it takes measurement so that you know that the things that you're doing are the right things and that you're putting the right tools to task, the right resources, going after the best problems and the best return on investment. So what does it mean to have a cyber resilient workforce? It starts with ensuring that each employee understands the positive impact that they can make on the company when they make good cybersecurity decisions. This is something that is often a mystery to employees. They think that they don't understand other than what they hear in the news on any given day of the latest breach or how their data has yet again been stolen because of information that's been leaked. But it really isn't a complex thing if you can break it down in terms that make sense to them. Make it about the things that they do every day, like reading email. Help them understand what a good security decision is. This way, your employees can switch from being the root of the problem to an extension of your cybersecurity team. And that way, your experts and your team can shift to focusing on understanding and preventing threats, not just cleaning up after employee mistakes.
So that's a really critical point that Michelle just brought up. We want to unpack a little bit more because we see this as shifting left of human risk to actually create a resilient workforce. And while that may be a bit of a buzzword in our industry today, I want to unpack a little bit around what that means and how this is incredibly transformative. So we all have in our organizations employees who make risky decisions sometimes, often benign or well-intentioned. They just may not know better. And these decisions can include things like clicking on phishing links or accidentally navigating to risky websites, downloading pieces of software that they shouldn't. And a subset of these decisions then ultimately lead to an incident like account takeover, credential theft, phishing, ransomware, things that your incident response team is then tasked with triaging, cleaning up. And it starts putting us on this loop where once we have this triage and we're cleaning up, we're barely keeping up with the incidents we have coming in. When a recent report came out that said something like 44% of all incidents aren't addressed in the day they come in because there's such a huge backlog. And we further go down the list where we find that we're spending more and more technology, adding to already a really, really hefty, bloated tech stack. So there's increased spend. And what that does is create more alerts and noise without actually giving us insight and signals to where these incidents are coming from. And it creates this no-win cycle for our security teams that is incredibly hard to get out of. Because fundamentally, when we focus on this problem at the tail end, right, on the detect and respond, we're already coming in too late. We're already spending time on the cleanup instead of the prevention, where $1 at the beginning would actually help us prevent this whole cycle from happening. And so the question that we are posing is, well, how do we stop this chain reaction from the start? So that we understand which employees are risky and how do we minimize the impact that we can have further down the chain.
Yeah, like Masha said, you have to shift to the left. I'm sure that everybody in here has had to defend budget or defend asking for budget and then asked, how did I get the return on investment? And that becomes something that's really a struggle. However, if you invest in educating your employees and taking the time to teach them about good security decisions, you actually can start to see that value add. And that's something you can articulate and share with your executives. The value add we're seeing in making this shift is that we're now starting to spend more of our time on tuning and tooling so that we can defend forward and less time on cleaning up. The way you can successfully defend forward is to take time to understand the risk your employees are introducing to your environment, both at the individual level and at the team level. It's with that information, you can focus your efforts and reinforce the good behavior with recognition programs and address those areas of improvement with targeted training. This way, you're teaching the people who need to understand what actions they should be taking and the impact of those actions. You're spending your time on them. And you're giving recognition to those who are actually taking the right actions and are actually making your company more secure. Also, you got to put the right tools in place, and not just the right tools, but the right controls to help control those riskiest areas. And we're going to talk about ways that you can identify how to best identify your strengths and improvements, and also how best to take that information for your tools. For my company, this has actually already paid off. Just in the improvement that we've seen with our phishing tests and using that data to give targeted real-time training has resulted in not only a major increase in the reporting of the phishing tests, but also a major increase in the reporting that we're getting on phishings every single day, which is making us more secure.
So we've mentioned the term human risk a couple of times already, and I want to just take a step back and define it, because as Michelle just said, one of the key ways for us to shift left of responding to incidents is to start measuring it. You can't fix what you don't measure, nor can you give tailored feedback or tailored controls if you don't understand people's strengths and weaknesses. So let's start with the first definition of what is human risk. Risk is defined as the chance that something's the likelihood times the impact of something happening. And that's a broad definition. So when we take it one step deeper and understand, well, what is human risk? Human risk is the probability, the likelihood that someone is going to make a security decision that might increase your attack surface, might jeopardize your organization, and multiplying it by the impact. And in turn, leaking their credentials may be less risky than your CEO leaking credentials. So those are two incredibly critical pieces of understanding what your level of exposure is in your organization. Now, when we think about measuring risk in your organization, what should you be measuring? When I work with a lot of organizations, most people start with measuring mindset. How many people are successfully completing quizzes at the end of a security training? And while knowledge is important, it's not enough. It's what your employees do in the wild, if you will, that is the area that really matters. We don't grant people driver's licenses just by how well they pass their driver's exam. We actually wait to see that they're able to drive on the road. And it is the understanding of what people actually do, not just what they know, that is the biggest difference about truly measuring this effectively. So what do you measure? Your employees on a regular basis are putting out information about how they interact with with security based on the decisions they make hundreds of times a day. Do they navigate to websites that are blocked by your web browsing technologies? Do they try to click on links, mock phishing or real phishing? Are they reporting? How are they handling sensitive data? Are you having to clean up after them around different incidents? So there's a lot of telemetry around every individual that helps paint a picture. And so based on past performance, you can begin to understand what it might look like in your future case. And when we take a look around the holistic view of what it means to measure human risk, it's not just phishing, although phishing is a really critical piece. There are key components that paint a really full picture around what a human risk looks like per individual. And you can see there's lots of small decisions, as we just talked about, that can help flesh out this understanding. And so by understanding the decisions that every employee is making, we're able to get essentially a credit score for every employee, if you think about this as a concept. And it allows us to understand what an employee is good at and bad at, and quickly understand how much trust we should put into an individual from a controls perspective, but also how much training, how many resources. And this is not to say that everyone who is on the tail end, the straggler is a bad employee. There might be fantastic contributions in sales and marketing. There's just a certain amount of security trust that they need to be allotted to. And we don't have to stop at the individual level. We can pull in HR data and start mapping this organizationally and seeing where your trends are by department, by leader, by manager. I'm going to show you in a little bit around findings that we've seen around trends for different department areas. And this helps you focus your efforts and time on departments that may need it more than others. In this case, it sounds like marketing might need a little bit of help around passwords and sensitive data handling. So, as I just alluded to, one of the things that Elevate Security has done is worked with organizations like OMF to help them map their human risk. And we've had the opportunity of collecting the largest data set around security decisions that employees are making globally. It's a data set that I'm incredibly excited about because it's the first of its kind to truly paint this picture. And so one of the things that we found is a series of findings in partnership with a research institute called Scientia, observed over 4.5 million decisions made by about 114,000 employees. So not just in OneMain Financial, but across dozens of companies. And so some of the trends that we have found is that demographics actually matter. We have found that non-contractors are more likely than contractors to click on phishing links, click and compromise themselves on phishing links, and managers surprisingly were more likely than non-managers. Non-managers being like frontline employees, and so this latter piece we actually unpacked a little bit further. We wanted to see where someone sat in the organization if we could predict how likely they were to click on a phishing link. And what we found was that you can quantify something that I call the squishy middle, right? It's not your CEO that's clicking on link, nor your SVPs, nor is it your frontline employees. It's the middle managers. And usually it's the first line of managers that are some of the riskiest in your organization. We've seen this trend not just for phishing and malware, but phishing click-through and compromise, but also for malware infection rates as well. So where someone sits, as it turns out, actually matters. And from there, we wanted to see how do we organize our training campaigns, and more specifically, our mock phishing. So we wanted to compare some trends on mock versus real world phishing. So we were able to map the times when employees received a simulated phishing event, clicked on the phishing event, and reported it. And as you can see, that most of the time when we phish our employees, we do it in spurts, probably because it's an automated system that says launch this phishing email right at the beginning of the next day, so midnight or 1 o'clock, or at the beginning of my workday, 9 or 10 o'clock. Most employees tend to click it when they receive it at 9 a.m., and that's about it. I mean, there's obviously this distribution, but that's clearly the largest spike when they are both clicking and reporting on it. So how does this compare to actually the real world? It doesn't actually look very similar. Real world phishing gets delivered at all times of day, which is not a surprise. It's probably what I would have guessed. But our employees are clicking at it very early in the morning, around 6 a.m., and at the end of their day, at the very end of their workday, so 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. And there's a lot of really interesting ideas around this, probably because we're most tired and our spidey senses aren't up, which helps us understand that if we need to look at this as a human problem and not just as a security problem. And people tend to report this pretty ubiquitously throughout the day, if they are able to report it. So when we compare those two, just to quickly take a look, we see that we don't phish, we don't train our employees to match what real world attackers do. And so by understanding, again, the data sets that of how our employees are actually getting attacked and how we're training, we can start organizing our programs to be more resilient against the way our attackers are testing our employees. Two more exciting findings I wanted to share with you. One of them about the fact that the culture that your department has actually matters quite a bit. The norms that people hold each other accountable to. So let me explain what you're looking at. The bubble sizes are how many emails, phishing emails, a department received, and the x-axis is how big this department is. And so you can see that it doesn't actually matter the size of the department. There are departments who are small in size that click in phishing links and small in size that don't. And there are departments that are large in phishing size and some that don't. And so that means it's actually not the size of the department or the strength of the leader necessarily, or the fact that you report up to an SVP, for example, that determines whether or not you're going to click on a link. There's something about the norms, the way that people are held accountable to, either themselves or their peers, some of the security culture and the positive reinforcement that Michelle was talking about earlier, that starts driving this norm of behavior across organizations. And the last finding I wanted to share with you is that it's possible to correlate a couple of behaviors. So how you show up in one way can help us understand how you might respond to other security incidents that might happen a little bit less frequently. So in this case, we want to take a look at training, because training completion happens regularly, consistently across all departments. But we wanted to see how that would react to responding to real-world phishing and reporting. So we found that people who were regularly late on completing their security training were also statistically significantly less likely to report and more likely to click on a phishing link by almost 5%. So taking a look at the people who are regularly clicking on links, regularly taking late training, middle managers, non-contractors, you can start pulling together some insights around where to actually focus your time and energy, because not everyone in your organization is created equal. So with that, I wanted to hand it over to Michelle to talk through how you can use and apply some of this data in the real world.
And Marsha, I can't tell you how valuable data like that is, and being able to understand not just what is happening across the board in the research that you present and you shared with us, but also how do you gather this kind of information for your own environment? I find some of it, I really was surprised by some of it. Some of it I wasn't surprised at all by, particularly the time of day of real phishing, because I know that I do emails before I go to bed and I do emails first thing when I wake up. And neither one of those times is that the best time for me to be making the best of decisions, because I'm a little foggy at both periods of time. So how do you now take these insights and really strengthen your cyber resiliency? One example is I get emails all the time from a variety of partnerships like the Financial Services Information Sharing and Analysis Center, who shares an incredible amount of intel with each other. Although all of the different members share about what's going on in their environment, and particularly phishing campaigns and what they look like. We take those actual phishing campaigns and use those to shape the campaigns that we run in our environment. That way they're more realistic. You also can use this data, like we were talking about, of when are these emails clicked, and put out targeted tips and tricks on telling your team members, do you really need to read emails at the end of the day or first thing in the morning? And if so, maybe just those emails, the senders, and leave the rest of them in the inbox until you get into the office or in front of your video.
Or after you've had your morning coffee.
After you've had your morning coffee. Exactly. Another thing that you can do is just find ways to communicate to the employees what they're doing. Like celebrate when they make good decisions, celebrate the things that they're doing well. And also provide them with meaningful insights that's specific to them, specific to their role, and help them understand the impact of their actions. Perfect example up here is LastPass. We rolled LastPass out to our employees last year, and being able to really understand how is that being adopted, how is that helping, is an incredibly valuable insight. But it's also, we can use this ability to communicate with our employees to say, hey, I know that you haven't done LastPass yet. Let me tell you why. Take a few minutes and do that now. And even more importantly, give them the link right there to go and sign up. All of these things just provide meaningful insights and help employees to think about their actions and the impact of their behaviors.
I have a similar experience when my fitness tracker tells me about my performance and compares to my peers. I'm much more likely to go out, run or work out than just generic best practices. And so personalized means a whole world of communication that is much more motivating to an individual. And we see it from advertising to fitness trackers. So why not security?
Yeah, and a great example of that is one of the things that we do with our phishing tests is if somebody takes the right action, we send them a congratulations email right away. It is so surprising how well that is received and how people actually tell each other whether or not they got the congratulations email. Yeah. In particular, our executives, they love to share that whether or not they got it right or not. Heck, they're even telling us when they didn't get it right because they're like, I didn't get the congratulations email. So you can also use contests, you can use swag. There's all sorts of ways to spotlight and really incentivize and reward employees who are making and taking the right action, whether it's with them directly or recognizing them to their leadership or putting them in competition with each other. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. And I agree that competition for fitness is that's no joke. So why not apply it to security?
Why not?
Especially since we all have limited resources. And as Masha has talked about, a one size fits all, it's limiting. If you can find a way to target the individuals and the teams, and like here, you can see the teams that need additional assistance, well, maybe public relations needs a little bit of time spent with them. You can tailor the training, you can tailor events with those teams, go talk to one of their staff meetings, give them a specific training opportunity, bring them into your program and help them understand what they're doing, give them a piece to do for it. But focus your time on the people that need it. In addition, you can use this data to also identify champions. So those champions become force multipliers. And I think I might reach out to the data team here and say, I would love to make you guys champions for our entire enterprise and help people understand, why do you make the decisions that you do? And why should others do the same? This way you also can recognize top teams, because like we've been talking about, nothing breeds improvement like a little bit of healthy competition. So it's not just about what you do with the people. You can also use this data to make your technology investments more effective. Make it based upon individual identities and the risk behaviors that they've exhibited. Here's some examples of things you can do. If you've got an individual who is clicking on phishing links a lot or going out to sites that they don't, you can implement preventative controls. You can increase the monitoring for those individuals, especially those who are showing risky behaviors. You don't need to deploy those resource-intensive controls to the entire enterprise because that can decrease performance. How many times have you heard people complain about this new security tool is making it impossible for me to do my work? So what if you instead just targeted those controls only to those who are making the bad risk decisions? Relaxing controls, relaxing training, saving time on monitoring. This is a huge benefit for security and a way that you can use this data to prevent the blast radius of risky decision-making. One example, a specific example, is like social media. Instead of blocking social media for everybody in the company, how about if you just blocked it for those who are going and doing things that they shouldn't be doing out on the internet, or taking other risky behaviors? Because if they're doing risky behaviors across other security things, they are also likely to do some things in the social media place that you may not want them to be doing. The key is that you can apply this to all sorts of settings, all sorts of controls that you have, whether it is email filtering, what you're allowing your employees to go to or not go to, what control are you giving your employees for their machines, whether it's from software execution or data sharing. All of this information can really help to refine and make the tools that you're putting heavy investments in far more successful, and also make your security team far more successful.
I love that idea. It's like you're getting to the root cause by the training and the culture, but at the same time, you're reducing the risk and the exposure of your organization. And when you talk about competition and carrots, if you let me go to social media because I am a trustworthy employee, that seems great. And if you block it because you let me know that I'm a risky employee, I have the understanding of why you're doing that, and it treats employees like adults instead of third graders that need more care and attention, and it empowers employees to make their own choices and actions around how much privilege they might want in the organization or with security tools and access like social media.
What better way to have that conversation than an employee reaching out saying, why can't I get to social media?
Yeah.
Now you have another targeted training opportunity.
Yep.
So we've talked about a lot here in an area that I'm sure you can tell Masha and I are both particularly passionate about. So we do want to leave you with a couple of key takeaways. First, like I said, that foundation is so important, and you hear it all the time. If you have $1 to invest it in building out your core fundamentals. And one of those core fundamentals is every employee in your company. Invest in how can you make each one of those an asset instead of a risk. Understand the decisions that these employees are making and measure the risk of those decisions. Measure the risk that is bringing to your environment, specific to your environment. And then leverage the insights from that measurement to tailor your engagement. There's so many ways that you can build and improve engagement with each of your employees, particularly in building a coalition of security champions across your company, which is how you're going to drive a strong cybersecurity culture. It's also how you're going to make your technology more effective.
And as we talked about, this is such an incredible and exciting opportunity for us as a security industry, because we can actually stop this hamster wheel of just cleaning up and use this type of insight to defend forward. So we're not just reacting, we're actually getting proactive and tackling one of the largest and most ubiquitous problem that affects almost every organization. So we can get ahead of this, of just treading water, and actually reduce this risk in a meaningful way that also brings our employees along for the ride to help us drive this change in our organization. I want to leave you with one last resource. We talked about some of the findings that we published recently alongside with Scientia Research Institute. But if you'd like a copy of our full set of findings, there's a lot of stuff we didn't get to cover in this presentation. You can download the report at this link and dive in even deeper.